All right. Good afternoon, gamers, and welcome to episode 12 of Games with Dave. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Alfred from Meditating Munky. His Zine Quest 5 Kickstarter, Ninetoe's Guide to Monster Hunting for Dungeons and Dragons 5th Edition, is launching this upcoming Tuesday, February 7th, and will run for 15 days. He has done the illustration and maps, and the creatures were all designed, or he designed the maps and creatures, and it was written by the compelling Ninetoes himself, which we'll get into. This is definitely a Kickstarter you don't want to miss. How's it going, Alfred? Welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, we're pretty excited about it. The so it just want to state too, the illustrations and maps are definitely stuff that I am doing, and the ideas and concepts were like a collaboration of me and
Gotcha.
Tim
Okay.
Ninetales, and then he's doing the writing for it. But yeah, other than
Excellent. So who is Ninetoes? I mean, we know who the Meditating Munky is, but
so Nine Toes originally started out. He was an NPC. He's a hobgoblin wizard, necromancer, and adventurer. Um, and he's also he was originally he started off as an NPC in Tim, the writer, in his campaigns that he runs. Eventually kind of turned into like an actual character and like a real staple in his world. And he's even written two LIT RPGs, novels that use his actual verbatim name. Um, so yeah, he's kind of more than just Nine Toes. He's a real established like NPC in his world. He's got novels written about him by Tim, and Tim goes by the nickname Nine Toes on Discord and on social media and everything. So Tim is Nine Toes.
nice. That's awesome. So what inspired you to create this monster hunting book?
So a bunch of things. I mean, Tim and I started collaborating and working together with my last Kickstarter, Tomb of Dungeons. I brought on a couple of different writers for it, and me and Tim just work really good together. Like we get together, we start brainstorming, we start talking ideas, and we just had I was eventually I kind of popped the idea of like, hey, do you want to do something for Zine Quest together? And he was all about it, and then so we started really just brainstorming like ideas. Like we had one of the adventures that we started to write for the Tomb of Dungeons kind of went, I don't want to say off the rails, but it kind of turned into more, not so much a dungeon and more into like a regional thing. And I was just like, hey, why don't we use some of this, like we'll change this one up and redo this one for the dungeons, for the Tomb of Dungeons book that we were writing for, and we'll use this concept for kind of like what we're going to base this the Zine Quest idea off of, and which was a more of a regional guide, hex crawl kind of looking thing. And and then we turned that into some monster hunts, because I mean honestly, monster hunting is just something fun. You can create an adventurers guild, you can go off on more quests, and I think both of us and a lot of other people who run RPGs really like things that you can kind of plug in to like any campaign, any setting. Is so having a little poster on your in your adventuring guild, hey, we need to get rid of this monster or whatever. That's perfect, and something that anyone can kind of use in any campaign. And that's kind of what initially has inspired it. And just, I mean, monster hunting is just cool. So
It sounds cool. So what does an actual monster hunt in this zine entail without giving away too much information?
so there's a lot. Obviously, the monster hunt entails a monster that you're hunting. Or are you hunting it, or is it hunting you? So there's a lot of stuff in there that we're gonna kind of, it's gonna be a good bit of lore about the creature that you're hunting, what is out there, some of its characteristics. Most monsters are also hunters themselves. They're the predators, and while you're out there trying to hunt a predator, you could be very well become the prey. So some of the things that we're looking at in here are reasons for these monsters to be out there and to need to be hunted. Also, we're looking at ways to lure it in, and like different monsters like different things. Like one of them might only like certain kinds of food, like it might only like goblins. And then as you start to learn more about it, you might learn that it only likes live goblins.
Oh, jeez.
And then so as you're trying to lure it out, you're gonna start gathering some clues onto how to better handle yourself to get that and put yourself into a more advantageous position whenever you do find it. But that's not where hunts usually end. Like, what else do you do once you hunt it? It's just done. You get a trophy, put it on your wall, bring it back to camp. There's more to that. You could also something else that we want to put in here is utilizing the parts of the monster. Like, what else can you do with this monster after you find it and you capture it or slay it? What's useful off of it? Like, does it have feathers that you can turn into magical items? Is its eye really scales? Its bones? Can you make some armor or weapons out of it? So we're going to pretty much put in some crafting recipes to create some really cool gear and magical items out of all of this. And we had a cool idea with it too, like, because you can make like the dune chicken use its feathers for like a cloak or something. But then what about whenever you get all of the monsters together and you got the feathers from the dune chicken, you got the plasm from the mime plasm, you got the bones from the bone mass. You can make a massive item that uses all of them together. So that was another really cool thing that we're thinking about with this one.
That is so cool. I love it. Now, are the hunts meant to be more one shots, or are they kind of meant to be played over multiple sessions?
So that's a tricky one. I think any of these hunts should be designed to, at the very minimum, be a session's worth of play. But I mean, every group's going to be different. So we have the hex crawl side of the regional part of it that is getting to there. You have the Adventures Guild learning, gathering clues. I mean, it really depends on how the DM wants to run it. Are they going to give you all these clues? Or are you going to have a guide that's coming? This Ninetoe is going to be coming with you to figure out all this stuff. So like you can really fast forward some of the stuff by giving them the clues and getting them straight to it. But if you're going to be really going through a regional crawl to find this monster's lair, I mean, if looking at other hex play popular modules like Tomb of Annihilation, a lot of your play is actually doing the crawl itself. So I mean, yeah, we by minimum I would say a session, but who knows where the characters are going to go. These things could be 3-4 sessions in themselves, just with the exploration side of it. Once you get into the actual fight, the actual hunt, I'm sure it'll just take up a portion of the session. But yeah, no, it's by minimum I would say a session. If you're going to go through really role play the adventure side, the role play the gathering clues and setting up the hunts even more in depth, I mean, it could even turn into like a full on mini short campaign that could span over like 10-15 sessions, maybe more.
Yes,
Really
so
depends on the
cool.
group.
That is so cool. So you kind of mentioned the monsters, and I'm going to end up saying, without giving too much away, a few times, but what can you tell folks about the 4 monsters that they'll be hunting?
So at base, the campaign is going to consist of 4 monsters. Yes. And I know one of your burning questions later would probably be, what about stretch goals? And yeah, there could be more unlocked for sure.
Nice.
But we have so one of the things that we started off with, we kind of were looking at the different types of monsters. So you got fae, beasts, undead, fiends, aberrations, and so forth. So we kind of wanted to cover something from each one that we could, for the most part. So yeah, we have beasts, we have fae that's going to be involved. We have some aberrations, even elemental. We have that one marked down for one of our stretch goal ones.
Nice.
And then beyond that, we kind of really wanted to make sure that like we had some pretty unique ideas in there, but also hitting on some cool Easter eggs if you're like fans of other games and media and stuff like that. Like just to give away one of the core ones. I don't have you ever what's the name of the game? It's an indie game that's out right now. It's still in beta. It's on Steam. I'm gonna pull Steam up just so I can remember what it's called. Uh Valheim. Have you ever played Valheim?
I've seen it. I haven't played it. A bunch of my friends would play it and stream it, and I would watch them play, but I
So
haven't.
yeah, Valheim's a really cool game. I played it for a little bit. I actually ran a server for a little bit and totally got like into it. Built like a big camp and base and everything. And then one of the fun, it's kind of similar in a way to what this is. It's like you're going out hunting for, you're gathering resources, and then there's some really massive monsters that you can fight. Now, one of our monsters, we kind of are borrowing the name in a way of one of the monsters, but it's not at all anything like the monster that was in Valheim. But Bone Mass is one of them. And I'll give a little bit more into what Bone Mass is in our version. So, as you're hunting, Bone Mass is going to continue to get more stronger, and he's going to continue to get more abilities that you can unlock for him as you are out there hunting on the regional side of things. So if you're out there going through the wilderness and you kill a deer, he might get some abilities that he absorbs through that creature being killed in his region. Same thing with like, just throwing out some random other animals and things. So if you find some goblins, you might get the pack tactics and stuff. And yeah, so that's a pretty cool, I thought, a really cool creature. And he's going to be our undead fiend kind of mixed. I feel like undead and fiend and devils and demons, they kind of run parallel to each other. So that was like our idea from that portion of the monster types, was Bone Mass. And like I said, he's going to grow as you're hunting. He's going to get stronger. He's going to absorb the abilities of the other things out in the wild that you, while you're on the way to him, to find him. It's going to, everything that you encounter is going to make him stronger and more powerful. But yeah, that's one of the inspirations was kind of from, in a way, Valheim, and well, it kind of evolved from there. That's one of the things. We also have some other creatures too. We have one of the other creatures that we have is the bird of paradise. We're going to call it false paradise. That one's going to be like our fae themed one, and we're still a little bit on the drawing board about how we want to really make that one useful. I think we've come up with some really cool items that we want to have on the crafting side of that creature. But beyond that, like, it's that's another one of the creatures that we have.
Nice.
And some of our other creatures that we got from the stretch goals, I am really excited about to have them come to life.
The bone mass sounds kind of terrifying, because you could end up making that really big if you decide not to go directly to it and you just keep killing other things. If you've got a murder hobo group that just kills everything they encounter, then that bone mass is going to be big and scary.
Yeah, especially when you put in things like survival, because you're going to be in a hex crawl. Like at that point, you're probably your group. If you follow like how you're going to survive in the wilderness, your group might be hunting a good bit. So you might encounter some boars, because we're going to have some random tables to have other things that you encounter, because it's not just going to be these big creatures in a hex crawl. If it was just a hex crawl of these 8 creatures that are in there, and what's the point of it? So we're going to have a region that you can go through, and there's other things that you can encounter as well. So yeah, as you go out there, you find a boar, you find a you maybe you get near a river and you find some electric eels that you get. So yeah, like hunting in his territory can really make it more powerful. And given the clues that the players get, they may or may not realize what they're doing at that stage.
I love it. Um, so you've mentioned the hex crawl a couple of times. What can you tell folks, and pardon me if I butchered the name, about the Ebelon Wastes?
So the Ebelon Waste, it's pretty much like a borderland between like a civilized realm and the places beyond. It was kind of like created by like a freak accident, and it's more like a place of danger and wonder, both in equal measure. Um, People that are there are more so like seeking to tame it and plunder its treasures. Um, and another thing that we wanted to do, because we have the Ebelon Waste, and then we have the city that we're kind of giving you to start in, and that's it's the Council of Agnostia, which is kind of run by an adventurers guild. And one of our deliberate goals with that is, if you didn't pick up on the name Agnostia, agnostic.
Yep.
So we want to make this something that we're going to provide everything to where you can just use what we have in your own game and you don't need to worry about any setting or not. But we also want to make it agnostic enough to where you can take that and drop it into Faerun, Eberron, wherever. I don't know about Eberron. That's a little more steampunky, but I mean, you probably could. There's a lot of wild areas out there that are really uncharted, but we wanted to kind of make it to where it's agnostic enough to where you can use our content and put it into your own setting, whether it's another setting from a major publisher or third party publisher that you're into, or your own homebrew setting that you're running on itself. So as far as like the world itself, like the Waste, it's a very uncharted section. So if you got a world, a setting that you're used to running, that's your own homebrew, you're gonna kind of want to find like that outskirt area, and then there's that uncharted. Because I don't think there's a setting out there that doesn't have some kind of wild wastes of
No.
unchartedness. That's where you want to place it. If you're using, I mean, you can use Cholt if you want to from Forgotten Realms and just have that jungle be where you're going. A lot of this should fit into there too. Although you kind of probably want to have something that's gonna, because we're gonna have some biomes in here. You want to make sure that you have access to some different biomes as well in the world that you're going in. But as far as like the actual Ebelon Waste, we're going to be creating a decent amount of lore for this. And if you are using our setting and for it to be to really be an unexplored area, we're going to be giving enough information about it and to really set you up to have a really interesting setting and an interesting hex crawl that makes it feel like it's very exploration based.
Nice. Yeah, you mentioned putting this into Chult, and Chult's already kind of terrifying enough as it is without throwing like the bone mass in there.
Oh, and imagine if you had something like, if you wouldn't in what's the dinosaur, King Feathers?
Yes. Yep.
Imagine if you kill King Feathers and then bone mass absorbs King Feathers too.
Oh, geez.
Just thinking of that.
Yeah, give it the maw of a T-Rex, and then no. No. So which of the hunts for you and Tim have both kind of been your favorite to design, really?
So we're still in the drawing board of it right now. So they haven't like fully been designed. We've sat down, done a bunch of brainstorming, and kind of started up like enough to go off of what we really want to do and have a good idea. But so far, I think what I would say, I'm going to kind of pull a two-part one on this one, and they'll both be from our stretch goal monsters that we have planned. One of them is just still on the concept basis, and I'm just excited to get to flesh this one out. And I mentioned it earlier, but it's the Doom Chicken.
It
I just think that's a cool name.
is.
And like the concept, like we were kind of brainstorming, we were like going on Google looking up some like inspirational artwork to kind of go off of. And like we found it's probably someone's cockatrice or something, but it was just like this one image that we kind of threw onto our little drawing board that we have to grab ideas from. It was just like, that thing looks frightening, and I just can't wait to do that one personally. The other one that I'm going to kind of do a two-phase questionnaire of giving you two answers, especially considering that we also have already mentioned the T-Rex. We wanted to have a cool ooze,
Nice.
and Tim has already written a monster that he was going to put into one of his adventures that he had already written, but it just didn't quite fit, and it didn't quite make it in to one of his previously written adventures. And so he had the stat block sitting over here of a gargantuan ooze, and it just happens to be that, you know, the stock art that he had kind of used for inspiration of it is a giant ooze with some legs and like an ogre head coming out of one side and a T-Rex head coming out the other side.
Oh,
So
nice.
um that one, just like looking at it and just seeing his idea that he's already kind of put into it, I'm like, we got to include that one in here. Um, so yeah, I think those are probably the two that I'm personally looking most forward to. Tim's answer might change. I mean, honestly, like all of them, I think all of them that we've written down so far, I think have a really interesting concept behind, and that's part of what we were wanting to do with it. That's why we had a brainstorm session. That's why we sat down and just made a board and just threw ideas at it, and we're just like, which one? And then we started mixing some of the things that we're having together and just really evolving what we're going to create. And that's when we came up with 4 core ones. And I know, just because I've seen your list of questions you having, we'll probably move into stretch goals here in a second, but we have 4 definitely planned for stretch goals that we want to really hit. And so we got a solid 8 creatures right now that we think are going to be just ferocious, interesting, and frightening. And
They sound it.
they're perfect in my opinion. Something that I
Nice.
want to use in games.
Yeah, I'm already like itching to get my hands on the bone mass, the Doom Chicken, and the ooze. So, so we've kind of touched on it a little bit here and there, and it is actually my next question is, what are the stretch goals that you have planned? Like,
So yeah, like I mentioned so far, right now we got the 4 monsters. And they will, you know, I don't want to give away all of them.
no,
Um, I know you've gotten a chance to see the preview of the page.
yes,
So we're gonna kind of hide things, you know, like, so we have like our stretch goals like fully funded, and then the next one that we have, which will be our first creature, you can kind of see a shadow and you kind of get a clue of what it may or may not be, at least themed off of. But yeah, we'll be putting in those 4 for the core. And we got some other ideas that we might put in there. It really depends. It's hard to say, and that's kind of why I didn't throw all of the stretch goals out there right now, so that we can kind of see how the project kind of unfolds, and if it does something special, we can start to really look at some of the other things that we can get made for it. I don't want to quote anything because I don't want to commit to any of these goals, but ideas that we've had for other things that we could potentially do. Always, I think everyone's always a fan of cards. So potentially a small amount of cards for these creatures could be something that could maybe get made. We right now are not guaranteeing, but we're setting our goal to have at least 8 creatures in here. if we smash through all those in like the first 24, 48 hours, I don't want to have a campaign sitting there going, yeah, that's all the stretch goals. Thanks. No,
Right.
we're gonna think of more. Like we got like on our board, we have 12 other ones that are like, man, these would be cool to do too. Um, so those are potentials. Also, there's other things that people like and merch wise, like I know something that's relatively easy to get would be something like stickers and pins, which could be pretty cool for a DM to have. Once you could give out these stickers for or pins, like put it right on your backpack, like a little button pin, as almost like your symbol to give your players as a trophy. Once they have taken out the Doom Chicken, you give them here you go. You have the pin for the Doom Chicken. You can put it on your backpack.
That's awesome.
So those are some ideas. There's other ones floating around there that we potentially might want to do. I know one of them that I personally want to do, because we mentioned that we're going to have some VTT stuff, and right now the VTT conversion is going to be just like an adventure conversion. But I know with a lot of specifically like Roll20, their VTT, a really fun part of that VTT for people is the compendium side. Being able to, so if you're familiar with Roll20, you'll know that you can have an add-on or a module and you can put that into your campaign and you have everything in there. But what if you want to use the bone mass in a different campaign altogether and you don't want to add everything in there? The compendium is able to drag and drop it right onto the board. And compendiums can be a little bit of a pain to create. I've actually done a couple of them, worked on a couple of them with some other creators. So I think it would be cool to maybe have that as one of the later stretch goals, to make it to where all the creatures that we're putting in here are not just going to be on the add-on version of the Roll20 version, but also unlocked in the compendium side of things. So that's another one that I was thinking of.
Nice. That would be really cool. I actually use Roll20, so that would be pretty awesome to just be able to drag the bone mass in there and be like, yeah, here you go, guys. Have fun.
I mean, we're not running in Ebelon. We are going in Schultz. Let's pull it into my Two Annihilation campaign and get that T-Rex.
And then the
mass.
King of Feathers is there. So what are some of the add-ons that folks can expect to have access to in Backer Kit?
So we right now, as far as the Kickstarter add-ons go, we're going to keep it fairly simple over there. I mean, obviously we have our PDF digital tier, we have the VTT edition tier, we have the print tier, and then I have the deluxe version that'll have the STL files as well. I do want to make the STL files available as well as an add-on on Kickstarter, as well as like if someone wants multiple versions of VTT add-ons. So like say if you use both Roll20 and Foundry, you can grab the other one as well. And if you don't want the physical zine itself and you just want the PDF, but you also want your STL files, you'll be able to get that through, like if you just want the PDF in the STLs, you'll actually be able to get like that for $5 cheaper, rather than getting the full deluxe version that comes with the print.
Nice.
But at that point, if you also want the print, it's just $5 extra at that point, and then you get everything. But after that's done, it's difficult to set up add-ons in Kickstarter when you have these stretch goals that may unlock more of this content, especially when you're starting to deal with things like that. I want to have as some of the add-ons like poster maps and stuff. So I mean, right now we have 4 that we're definitely going to be making layers for, that I'll be making maps for, and we might have more that get unlocked. So it's kind of hard to make that as an add-on on Kickstarter and then add more add-ons to it later on. So I think once we get done with the Kickstarter portion of the campaign and we see the full scope of what the actual book is going to be, some of the additional add-ons that you're going to see on the Backer Kit side will be getting getting the poster maps. I know some of my other campaigns that I've run for like my Seventh Moon Adventures and for the Zuma Dungeons that I've done in the past. Those were something that a lot of people were really into, was getting those poster maps. And so those will be something that you can plan to see as well. Also, I know I'm going to probably have we're considering having an add-on. I know I already set one up on the Kickstarter side of things where you can get some of the PDFs from like I mentioned Seventh Moon Adventures. So I'll probably have those available on PDF through the Kickstarter side of things. And then potentially, seeing how everything goes, I might even do a second print run for those other books to be able to let you pre-order the Tomb of Dungeon book, which we're actually sending to print later, potentially at the end of this month or the beginning of next month. That's going to be going to print, so we'll have some extra. I think once I get to that stage and I'm setting up the backer kit side of things, I'll know an exact count of how many copies of the extra hard copy for the Tomb of Dungeons I'll have on hand that I need to get rid of. Because if you know anything about printing, you're never going to get the exact count of how many you need.
Right.
You get 123 that you need to sell, that you need to get a copy of. Your minimum print's going to be like what, 200 or something. So so at that stage, once I finalize everything over there, I'll know exactly how many extra copies once I decide which printer I'm going to go for that book. So I can maybe put those in as extra add-ons. So for people who didn't pick up, Tomb of Dungeons or Seventh Moon Adventure zines, they'll be able to grab those through there as well.
Nice.
So yeah, that's some of the other ideas that we have for add-ons.
So you mentioned the STL files, and for folks out there listening that don't know what STLs are, they're 3D printable files. How many are you planning on releasing for the Kickstarter? Is it just the monsters or some NPCs or?
So that's potentially something that we could do, as well as one of the later stretch goals. So by default right now, every monster that we have that we're going to be making, we're going to have an STL file for by default.
Nice.
So that means as of right now, 4 of them are going to be in there as the stretch goals unlock. The planned stretch goals right now will be in an additional 8, so that'll be 8 of them. If we start adding on more creatures, they're going to come with an STL file that will be unlocked. I do like the idea that it was something that me and Tim were already floating, was making an STL. I think he would love it personally. Tim got kind of giddy just talking about it. But yeah, Ninetoes himself, maybe an STL, because I mean, this is his guide.
Right.
Why wouldn't this be something that we make an STL file for? So that's something that we're already kind of floating around the idea. Other NPCs, maybe that could be something else. If we get to the point, because we're going to have some other creatures, probably a lot of these will be like things that are on the SRD side of things. But I might make some of these other creatures from the SRD as well, make those potential things that we can have. But that one's a little bit scary if I start going the SRD route, because I mean, if we have just a list of a bunch of creatures that can be found in regions, I mean, that number can grow really fast.
Yep.
So, but I mean, that's potential. I mean, that would definitely keep you busy for a long time. And then it could just be like, hey, you can, if I wind up going that route, I think it would be like, here's the book, here's the core stuff. And since we hit such a, if our campaign gets that successful, it could be potentially like, I'm going to give you access to future things I create, which would be those other, because these are all things I want to make at some point. Like I want to make SRD creatures, things that anyone can use. That way I can use them as well for my own campaigns and whatnot. So it might be something that I just say, hey, if we get a lofty enough number, I'm just going to give everyone that gets the STLs access to future STLs that I create. That might be potentially something that's in there. But as far as for core, 4 for core, 8 for the play and stretch goals. That number could swell up to be as many as like 12, 20, who knows. Ninetoes is going to be one that I think once we do the first 4, that'll probably be the next one. The next stretch
Nice.
goal that comes through there is Ninetoes himself. So yeah.
Awesome.
And everyone loves STL files. 3D printing is if you aren't into it yet, and you play it. I mean, even if you don't play it at physical table, like 90% of what I play is on virtual tabletop personally. But I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shelves full of minis that I've 3D printed. My kid loves them. He's just like, whenever we print something new, he's all about it, like looking at it and just, so it's and I still do run campaigns, like my wife and my kid, he plays, he's starting to get into playing D&D, so that's where we use him for. And now that everyone's starting to return back to playing in person as well, I'm looking at starting another IRL campaign as well at my local hobby store. And so yeah, 3D printing, that's something that if you've ever thought of doing something other than a bottle cap for your mini or some gummy bears, which are fun. I love eating gummy bears after I kill a monster. But if you're ever thinking about something else, I mean, that's the route to go, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Once you get a 3D printer, that's your bulk of your investments done. And I know from back, buying. Oh, that's awesome. Actually, I think I saw that one. I think that one was now on a Kickstarter or something, or was that on a Patreon?
It was a Kickstarter a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing that pop up, and I was just like, "Oh, that's cool. I want that." But yeah, like once you have your 3D print, I mean, think about it. Like the box sets that I bought of, like, back when I was running Storm King Thunder at my hobby store, I bought like 4 bricks of Storm King Thunder minis, and that was like a couple $100
Yeah,
just to get
easily.
those. And I didn't even get everything I needed. I'm like sitting here going, okay, I got like a third of what I need, and then the rest of them is just going to be the bottle caps and gummy bears, or other random minis I already have.
Right.
So the 3D printing route, if you're going to drop that much money on a campaign already, you can buy a really, really nice 3D printer now for that same price. And there's so many creators out there that have almost anything that you can ever imagine. And it's, at that point, you're like signing up for someone's Patreon for like 5, 10, $15, and you get access to a bunch of really cool stuff. And all you got to do is print it. And a bottle of resin now is like $30.
Yeah.
So,
that lasts a while.
It pays for itself. If you're going to have a big collection of minis, it will pay for itself fast.
Yeah. Because you can get some pretty big ones in, like you were talking about, in those Patreons, that if you were to buy it individually, you could be looking at $40 to $50 for said mini, and you're able to print it for pennies on the dollar.
I mean, like, think about Tiamat himself.
Yeah.
I mean, that the price that WizKids is charging for that thing was what, like $500 or something?
Yep. Right around there.
There's people out there who've done 5-headed dragons. Probably Tiamat inspired. And yeah, I mean, it's going to take you, I mean, you'll probably use a bottle of resin to make a full scale size Tiamat, but you look at $500
versus
or you
30.
look at that 30, maybe a bottle and a half, $45 for the full. And that's, I mean, you got to think the size of that mini is the size of your desk.
Right.
So that's a lot of resin to print. But yeah, you're way better off going the 3D printing route. I'm a huge fan of it. I love them.
Me too. I just need to get a resin printer like we were talking about before we went live, and I've got to do it.
I'm the other way. I need to get me an FDM printer so I can print some of those bigger things like that cup.
Yeah, those things are so cool. Now, are you designing the STL files yourself, or?
Yeah, so I'm an artist, and I've traditionally started making maps whenever I originally started doing content creation. And eventually I started doing some illustrations. I was like, I'm making ventures, I'm doing stuff for VTTs, and you need tokens. So I was like, I'm gonna start making some illustrations. And then whenever Tomb of Dungeons came about, I started, I was like, I came to the kind of a similar thing where I was like, I ran through stretch goals and I was like, okay, what else can I do? I was like, well, STL files. I'm kind of looking at and learning Blender at that point. And so I was just like, I'm gonna make myself learn. And now I did bring on another guy to help me out with these STL files that I did for Tomb of Dungeons. But I also went and learned and signed up for. I actually went from Blender and moved over to ZBrush. Um, and I signed up for some courses. Shout out to Mina K, by the way, M3DM. She has some really cool STLs, and she has a Patreon that is a course where you learn how to do this stuff. And being that I already have a good bit of artistic side of me that knows how to draw, use Photoshop, I already understood Blender enough to make generic basic shapes and everything. It was really, the learning curve for me was pretty low. And then her course was super easy. So I started learning how to really do these 3D sculpting. And then like it was, man, I can actually it actually kickstarts it actually kickstarts a lot more of what you can do, because I can sit here and make an STL file now of a creature, and then I can take that and render the preview that I'm going to put out, because you want to show what you're
Right.
putting out, and I can take that and turn that into the base of my illustration now. So it's basically like killing two birds of paradise with one stone. Because now I make this STL file and I have the base for my illustration. And honestly, it is so much easier to a lot of people that have an artistic side. You're already that close to being able to do a 3D file. Once you get in there and you get used to the controls and what the functions of ZBrush or Blender is. I like ZBrush because I feel like it's a little bit easier to control. You're already drawing, you're already using your stencil, and you're already sitting here drawing on your pad. Now you can rotate what you're drawing and get some more details in of the feather and of the beak and the claws and stuff like that. And you can make some really cool stuff like that. And then you can pose it at whatever angle you want, and you don't got to worry about those weird hands from like the AI that you might
Or
be using
with 6 or 7 fingers and
or even, well, so what I was meaning so for was like, you look at the AI discussion, people are like, well, you can't draw good hands either, right? And you look at the AI hands that are coming out there with AI art, they don't draw. It's like no one draws good hands. Well, whenever you actually go and you do something with like an actual 3D pose, you're actually getting a good pose of a hand or a claw or whatever it is, and at the perspective that you want to have that, you're also getting from your light in your ZBrush the direction that your light's coming from, so that you get better shadows and everything. Whenever you're actually going and doing your illustration, it gives you a good reference to start from all around. So yeah. I can't remember this question when I kind of started going off the rails on
it's
it, I
all
think,
good,
but
man.
but yeah, that's what yeah, I am making the STLs.
That's so cool. So you're kind of like the one-man stop for your adventures. I mean, granted, yeah, you're working with other writers and stuff, but you're able to do so many facets
Mm-hmm.
of your adventure on your own. That's so freaking cool.
And if it, and also that's the other part too, like having, like, Tim being a writer, like I write too. Tim's also a writer now that I'm working with him. I'm an artist, and I've started learning STLs, but I also brought on Sam is his name. Actually, I had Sam and Jason. Jason helped out a little bit too, to help out with 3D models. So if it goes crazy and I get a lot more STLs and I can feel I can handle, I know I can look at Sam and be like, hey, you want to help out with any of these, inspire you? Do you want to take on any of these? And then I'll have him. And that's another thing too about STLs that I really like. Like you don't find many map creators or illustrators that like one person starts something and then you pass it on to the other person and they finish it. I know some of them do. I know, like for instance, I can know like C and Piku. They make some maps. I know like Piku starts off with drawing lines and C takes over, and they actually have a couple other people that help out too now. But not many creators have multiple hands on an illustration or a map. But with STL files, you can have someone kind of start off like your model, and then you can go, whenever it passes over to me, with I can go and put in more details, draw more scales, give it more styles and everything in there. And I think it's more common on 3D creators to have multiple hands on a model. So yeah, that's don't know where I was going with that one, but that's a thanks for coming to
No,
TED Talk.
yeah. We had kind of touched on the virtual tabletop stuff already. And these are all going to be for Roll20, Foundry, and Shard Tabletop.
Yeah.
How extensive is the work to prep everything for those 3 different VTTs?
So yeah, that is a good bit of work. I'm not gonna lie. Especially if I start bringing, I don't think I really got to worry about compendium side on some of the other ones, but there's a decent amount of stuff that carries over from one to the other, and if you plan it correctly, you're able to kind of do all of them anyways. And what I mean by that is you have 3 different systems, 3 different, I mean, you're obviously going to have to do your dynamic lighting on Roll20 and then do your dynamic lighting on Foundry. You could try to port it over with some of the importers, but you're still going to have to go through and spend just about the same amount of time fixing the different things because it doesn't transport everything perfectly, especially when you get to like hyperlinks too in your text. But essentially, if you're creating, and how Tim and I begin all of our creations, for words at least, is in just like a straight up Google Doc. And Google Docs really easy to work with whenever it comes to both, all 3 of them really, because you can copy it. Roll20 has a really weird text editor. I just want to put that out there for anyone who doesn't realize it yet. It carries over a lot of formatting that you might not want to have. So you got to stick to, if you go to Google Doc route, you want to make sure that you stick with a normal font and your normal basics. You don't want to get crazy with all the extra stuff. But yeah, if you at that point you're basically copy pasting in basic formatting into Roll20, you're going to do the same thing over on Foundry. You're going to copy paste your basic format. You just got to do it twice. And same thing with Shard, but you're still going to have to go through and do, you got to set up all of your maps and your, there's a different way to set up a table on Roll20 as there is on Foundry, and all that fun stuff, all the extra things. So you got to have you got to have the knowledge of each of them, to be able to make a really good BTT version for each of them. And so as far as like the question goes, like, is it create a lot of extra work? It absolutely does. But there's a decent amount of that work that gets transferred over, anyways. So it is what it is. And being someone, I fully support like all of the VTTs. Being someone who's a fan of video games growing up, all kinds of different video games, from RPGs to third-person shooters to or first-person shooters, sorry, to even like some of the sports games when I was younger, and whatnot, and just kind of seeing what EA did to like their football games and stuff, and they just kind of took over and made it to where no one else could make a game, and you just see like the way that just it fell stale after that kind of
Yeah.
happened. I hated that. And with a VTT, everyone's going to have their favorite one. And there is nothing wrong with liking Roll20. There's nothing wrong with liking Foundry. There's nothing wrong with liking Owlbear, Rodeo, or Shard, or any of them. Even some of these newer 3D ones that are coming up. I know eventually D&D Beyond is probably going to have their one, that they're going to have. There's nothing wrong with liking them. And I think that was one of, OGL was something that was a big discussion recently going
Yeah.
on, and how there was some particular wording on the way that Wizards was going to want to hinder, what I would say, other VTTs. That is so terrible, because when Roll20 was the only one around, they kind of, well, I mean, there was always fantasy grounds, but they were in a way 2 different types of VTTs. Like they had their own specialties. The Roll20 got really, they didn't have a blueprint to work with, and they made some really cool virtual tabletop ideas, they kind of came up with the dynamic lighting. They started, bringing in a lot of these other things like having card decks, tables, all this stuff. And there wasn't any competition at that time other than really Fantasy Grounds. And I know Power VTT / Astral came along at one point. But they didn't have a bunch of competition, and then they in a way grew stale. Anyone who's a fan of or was a fan of Roll20 and then went on to Foundry knows that. They know that Roll20 grew stale at one point, and that's why whenever Foundry came along and they're like, yeah, we're gonna make all the stuff that was on the suggestions forums that Roll20 kind of ignored for a while. We're going to make all that stuff, and we're going to make our VTT that much better. And so when they came out and they made this really awesome VTT, it lit a fire under Roll20 in a way. Whether or not they want to admit, I'm sure they'll admit it at this point. They know. I think Roll20 knows that they kind of fell behind. And Foundry came out and started making some really cool stuff, and that made Roll20 kind of get back in. And now people who are still a fan of Roll20, you're looking at some of the features that are coming out over there. They're doing better through dynamic lighting. They have doors and windows now. And those are things that Foundry originally came out with that made them better. And so when Foundry got better, that made Roll20 better because they started doing that stuff too. And it's going to go, and with Foundry's modules, like you look at like Mr. Ripper has like all that 3D stuff for the modules. It's just, I mean, you're watching the development of virtual tabletops really push the envelope further. So I'm a big fan of all the virtual tabletops. I like them all. Whenever I DM a game, I give, my players an option of which one they want to play in. Because I have all of them, or at least the major ones. I don't have Fantasy Grounds, sorry guys. But I have Roll20. I have I have an account over on Shard. I have Foundry, and I have no problems DMing on any of them. Whenever I start a campaign, I'm like, which one do you want to play with? Which one do you feel more comfortable with? Or do you want to try? Are you a Roll20 person who wants to try Foundry? We can do that, and I like them all. I don't want to say quite equally, but I like them close to equally.
Yeah.
And I love exploring and seeing what's new. Like actually recently, last night, actually, I hopped in Roll20 and DM'd a campaign last night. And there's like new stuff that I had a new player and it got brought into the group, and we're up to level 4 now in this campaign. And I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna have to go in and put your experience in after you get your core sheet done with the character mancer. And then once I put your experience in to boost you up, then you can level up. And then I realized that at some point, I don't know when, but they all of a sudden made it to where you don't even need to put your experience on there. You can just level up your sheet now. And I'm like, oh, why wasn't that thing something sooner? But it was cool. It was cool seeing that was a new, I don't know when they put that in there, but because it used to not be like that. But it's developing. And that's the thing, whenever virtual tabletops continue to develop, with to circle it back around to what I was against on it was, if WotC is going to try to hinder that development, it's just going to kind of make the whole, it's going to stagnate everything.
Right.
It's going to turn into those old EA Madden games that just were really cool and were really inventive. Whenever you had 2K and EA doing both of them, they both were making, one year one will be better, the next year the other one will be better, because they were like going, oh, look at these rules, these new parts that they came up with, and they were competing. And that competition drives innovation, and if we curb that innovation,
you get stagnation, like you said. Adam in the chat said he believes that D&D Beyond actually bought a company called Above VTT.
I don't know anything about that. I know about Above VTT. I know what I loosely know what it is, and I know WotC bought D&D Beyond. As far as like did I don't know about if D&D Beyond bought Above VTT. I couldn't really speak on that accurately.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that and see what I can find out.
Is that new? Has that happened recently?
I'm not sure. I'm sure. What's up, Adam, by the way? Thanks for watching.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that and see and get back to you on that one. And the other thing Adam actually said, he said Roll20 has the advantage of a very large fan base that can create custom sheets.
Mhm.
So that's
Well,
another.
also, yeah, I mean, that's a good point too. The same thing with Foundry. Foundry has the advantage of having a lot of people that use mods and stuff like that, and a really thriving party creator. Same thing with Roll20. They have all the APIs, all the character sheets, and everything. When you get into the D&D Beyond Walled Garden, as I call it, they're not going to be making things that's compatible with Pathfinder
No.
or Mouse Guard or Shadowrun or any of these other cool systems, but Roll20 will, and they're always going to. You put out a new system, I guarantee you, when Black Flag Project Black Flag comes out, that's going to be on Roll20, and it's
Oh,
probably going to
absolutely.
have a really nice character sheet. I'm actually super excited for that. I can't wait for Project Black Flag to come out. I want to start writing content for that when it does come out. Um, Other systems I really want to do is like Mork Borg. I want to get into those ones a lot. This Zine Quest was originally, I was thinking about making a Mork Borg thing, and then it kind of, when the OGL kind of got settled that it was going to go into CC, me and Tim had a long talk about it. We're like, well, we're more comfortable with making 5e content right now because that's what we've been always doing.
Right.
So we're going to study Mork Borg, and we're going to look into Pathfinder 2. And whenever Kobold Press drops their Project Black Flag, we're going to look into those, and we're going to really learn those because we both want to make things for these other systems, but we don't want to jump right into a Kickstarter and go like, "Hey, yeah, we're going to do this," and then all of a sudden be like, "Oh, hit a
Yeah.
wall of
Right.
creativity." There's one thing making content, and there's another thing making content that you're good at making. So we don't want to, like, we know that we're good at making 5e content right now. So that's where we're going. But as far as like, yeah, as far as like the character sheets and everything goes, I mean, that's huge as far as like for VTTs and stuff like that. Being able to have any of those character sheets of any of the different systems, small or big, that's always, in my opinion, is always going to give Roll20 and Foundry and these other VTTs to have them that big advantage. So
Nice. So the last question I had isn't really a question. It's more of a chance to let you do something. I know you've got a Patreon as well. And what I'd like to do is let you tell folks about that and its different tiers and what they get with your
So yeah,
Patreon.
like Patron obviously is. It's not my number one focus and everything. I mean, it is in a way. Anything that I create goes into my patrons, um, but like traditionally, like I've always, like I started off being a Roll20 creator on the marketplace over there, and then eventually I kind of was like, okay, well, I'll put a patron out there, and I didn't really promote it too terribly much or talk about it that much, but it's there, and then people started finding it and signing up for it, and it's a place for people to support me. Kickstarter kind of came around, Drive Through RPG and stuff, but Patreon, honestly, if you're a fan of my work in general and you want to support me, that's probably the best place to support me. So I have three tiers to start off with. There's the lowest tier, which is a $5 tier, which gets monthly content. And honestly, hint, I give out more than just a month's content. If you sign up at February 4th, you're going to have access to January and December's content. I want to make sure that someone comes in, they aren't waiting for me to put something out for February. So whenever they come in and drop $5, they already have stuff. They have last month and the month before, and then so forth. And it's for $5. I think that's pretty damn good.
Yeah, that is.
That's a lot of. I mean, I put out a bunch of content, and then beyond that, you have the $15 here, which is my backlog. That gets everything. Like you get access to my master vault that has. I mean, I couldn't even tell you what the exact count is. I know last time I counted, it was like 1,200 maps, and that was probably 4 or 5 months ago that I
Wow.
counted that one. Now, and I mean unique ones too, not like just night day versions to
Right.
kind of pump that number up. I mean, like and some of them are going to be generic because I did have a lot of earlier maps that were just like blank dungeon maps and stuff like that. But as I did a map a day thing for a while. So that, and I did that for almost 8 months.
That's
Um,
crazy.
so that right there is giant portion of it. And then, you know, I do Map Vimber I've tried to do it every year. I've successfully done the full thing 3 times now. And so, you know, you got those maps. I mean, that right there is another 30 to 30. So they add up quick, especially when you keep creating them. And yeah, so like 1,200 maps. I got a handful. I was ambitious at one point. I started trying to do some top-down tokens and trying to make the SRD stuff, so that I had something I could put into my adventures on Roll20. Eventually, I kind of was like, well, I want to kind of go to POG route, so I'm going to be making all of the stuff that's in Zuma Dungeons that I'm going to be porting into virtual tabletop, and any of the stuff that's going to be going into the virtual tabletop version of Ninetoes. I'm going to need to make a virtual tabletop token for it, and I'm moving into POG tokens at this point. In case you don't know what POG is, it's the little disc tokens.
I remember POGs.
Yeah, we all grew up in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so there's going to be all those tokens that they're getting. I'm already starting to do some of them. I collaborate with another STL creator. I actually do their Roll20 conversions for Mammoth Factory. They make some really awesome STL files. So they do adventures too, so I convert their adventures. So I worked out with them that I'm going to be making their illustrated tokens based off of their STL files, so that whenever we make their adventures, they have a token that can go into their Roll20 version, and also pass them over to the guy who's converting their Foundry stuff too, so that they have tokens. And so part of our agreement was that any of the tokens that I make for the virtual tabletop, they're available for my patrons too. And I've been doing that with them for almost a year now. So there's a lot of tokens
and a lot of maps. So,
and then you start to get into like I started making these illustrations for the magic items for Tomb of Dungeons. Going to do the same thing for the Ninetoes guide. So I'm doing illustrations, magic item cards. You can print them yourself at your house. There's a lot of stuff, and in all my PDFs too. Everything I mentioned, my 7th Moon Adventures earlier. Those are in there. I've got some collaborations. I did some collaborations with Jan Luce. We did a couple of really, really cool adventures. Jan's awesome, and he makes way better top-down tokens than I do. Big plug for him. I'm a huge fan of him. I love his tokens. And I've done some other stuff with there's a handful of collaborations that I've been on. There's another one that's Amat Crystal that I did with One Page Mage, and there's a couple other people on there. I know DM's Tool Chest was on there, and Bodhi from Slow Quest was on there, as well as Necro Music did some music for it. So you get access to all that stuff for my $15 tier. And then I do have another tier at the top of that. It's kind of, it originally was like, as other creators always say, anytime that you're talk to other creators and you're looking at how to do a good patron, they're like, some people that come there just want to support you. And if you give them, your $5 tier, your $15 tier, they'll sign up for those. But if you give them a higher one, they, it might not be the most popular, but somebody might say, hey, yeah, I'm gonna throw you a little bit extras. But I also incentivize that one a little more, because I know there's a lot of writers out there who struggle at having stock art, who struggle at having maps made or commission those types of things for whatnot. So my $30 tiers, my highest tier, is designed for that. It is to give people who want to give a little more to me, they can have that one there. Also, for people who are writers and creators, they can jump in there and they can use my tokens and my maps to write an adventure to.
Nice.
And then they can that's my commercial tier, if you will. And also same thing with the STL files. If you run an Etsy shop or something and you 3D print and sell prints of 3D printed stuff, that's pretty standard for most STL creators. I'm not a front STL creator. That's not my biggest focus or anything, but it's there, and I gave it all. It's there. And also on top of that, like if someone's just kind of going, hey, I just want one map or something like that, you don't gotta sign up for the $30 tier. If you're just gonna make one adventure, you can just talk to me and we can work something out or whatnot. Or I mean, hell, I might even say you just want to do it one time, go ahead. you know,
Yeah,
go ahead and grab one.
that's awesome.
Pretty easy to work with. But that's what my patrons there. It's there. It's for people who want to support me more on the monthly thing. But you also are going to get the best deal out of any avenue that I release my content on. That's definitely the best. If you're a bargain deal person, that's the best way to go. And the $15 one, that you'll get everything I've ever released. Even like my Tomb of Dungeon playtest stuff, it's all in there. And whenever we get the final version of that big huge $50 book, that's it. It's going to live there. I'm going to put it in there. I'm not going to sit here and obviously, if you want to buy it off a Drive-Thru RPG or get it on the Roll20 version of it, you can totally do that there. But if you support me on Patreon, you're going to get it.
Nice, dude. That's
the
so
PDF,
awesome.
The PDF, so yeah.
Well, that's great. So is there anything that we've missed that you'd like to touch base on about Ninetoe's Guide to Monster Hunting?
I don't know. So it's, obviously to give a little summary of what it is, it's going to be a cool little hex crawl. Did we put the link in chat yet
I put the link in the description for both your Patreon and the Kickstarter when I went live.
I don't have the chat open up over here. So I haven't been following.
Well, I don't have it in the chat. For whatever reason, my computer doesn't like to let me sign into the chat. So, but I did put it in the description. So anyone interested in that can click the link down below, and and they'll be able to go to both your Patreon and the Kickstarter page.
Nice. It launches on Tuesday, and it's going to run for 15 days, and you can sign up now to get the little notification. Honestly, even if you don't, I think this is something that's important to tell anybody who, for any, not just my Kickstarter, but for any Kickstarter. Kickstarter is an algorithm machine. So even if you don't want to pick this book up, but you want to support a creator, myself or other creators, paying attention to who is putting these things out there and signing up for that sign up to be notified whenever it launches thing helps the algorithm on everybody. Even if you're not going to support it, even if you have no plans to send money to anybody, by clicking that button, it lets Kickstarter know we're going to bump this one up a little bit more in the featured lists and stuff like that, and what it shows to other people. Because if you have like 900 people, just a random number, that are interested in it, but it's going to bump it that much up, and the other products that you also might like sections. So if you want to support somebody without having to actually support them, that's one of the best ways, is to go in there, click the link, and sign up to get notified. And who knows, maybe you might look at it later and be like, hey, I actually do want this. And towards the end of the month, towards the end of the campaign, especially when you see all the stuff that starts getting unlocked on the stretch goals, you might be like, we're only doing $5 for the PDF, and $5 for PDF, $10 for the VTT tier, $15 for the print, and then $25 for the deluxe. It comes with the STL files. So you might be like, man, this thing's actually turning into a pretty big thing, and I'll pick the PDF up at the end of the month, and especially when you see everything gets unlocked. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Cool. Well, I know I will be there day one because I cannot wait for this. But thank you so much for joining me today, Alfred. And thank you, Adam, for checking us out. And he says he already checked out both the Patreon and the Kickstarter page. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, man. And for everybody that watched and tuned in, thanks. If you enjoyed the interview, give it a like, give it a thumbs up, and maybe subscribe to the channel if you'd like to.
And check out the other videos, because there's other things that are going on that Dave covers. And don't just support him or support me. Click on the other links, click on the other follow the Kickstarter buttons and everything, and support the whole community. Like YouTube's just like Kickstarter with the algorithm.
Yep.
Click the like, comment in there. That's what makes him grow. That's what makes more eyes get on creators like not myself and future creators that are going to be on this show. So,
and be sure to check out Meditating Munky everywhere. All right, folks, have a great day. Oh, I got to get my hand over this way. I still get confused by the camera. All right, thanks, folks, and I'll catch you later.